now invite my co-panelists, Pamela Kumar. Please put your hands together for Pamela, who has a lot of experience in the industry, more than 30 years, and she is currently with the Cloud and Innovation Computing Council of India. And may I invite Anita Bidappa from IBM? Anita again has straddled multiple MNCs in terms of her knowledge and experience. So she's going to share her experience of having been with Intel, Lattice Semiconductors, and currently with IBM. And she leads the product development. So we will hear from her. And can I invite Rituparna Mandal? Ritu has been with Texas Instruments for more than 15 years. And currently she is with the founder and CEO of Imensa Semiconductors. And the sweet spot is it's just taken over by MediaTek. So she's going to share with us what has been her journey, not just as an engineer and a project manager, but moving into the founder and a startup mode, and then getting taken over. What was the exit strategy? How did it work, and so on. So I'm expecting a lot of interaction because we're going to minimize. The way we're going to structure this is each one of us is going to share some insights, and then it's over to the audience because we really want to hear from you and interact with you, because I don't think it's just the knowledge which we share out here. And while we're talking about it as women transforming industry, we really want to look at it in terms of how we collaborate, how we partner, and how do we really create this ecosystem where it's the equality as well as inclusiveness. So we're not just looking at women, and so you're not going. So I'm really gladdened that we have many of the male counterparts out here, and thank you for being with us. And we look forward to, and I know many of you are interested in growing this potential, this talent potential within your own organizations you represent. So that is something which is common, and we will bond on that. Thank you. So I will get started with a few things which I wanted to share. Some of you perhaps are aware of this, but I wanted to put it out there so we understand why are we continuing to talk about women in industry or women in leadership. Because while we do have some of the inspiring role models, right from Ruchi Sangvi, who is with the first female engineer at Facebook, and now she went on to really lead the Dropbox. And then you have our Agniputri right here, that is Tessie Thomas. So you can start looking around. You have a Padma Shri warrior, you have Vanita, leading IBM. You can go on, picking up female leaders or women leaders. The idea is not just talking about women leaders and say they are different from male leaders. The idea is, can we inspire and bring in more women into the workforce? That is the only intention, and not to really look at it as women leaders are different from men. We're not talking about stereotypes here. We're not talking about those issues, because that is not the intent of this session. The intent of this session is to talk about how do we really inspire more women who are out there. We all know there are many women out there. Okay, they're all part of our lives, but are they willing to, or why are they not entering the workforce? A. And once they enter, what happens? Why do they drop out? Can we create that ecosystem within the organizations as well as in the societies or communities we're all part of, so that we encourage and inspire women to really continue to play along with us? That is the whole purpose and objective of this discussion. And I have a few statistics which I thought I will share with you. World Economic Forum ranked India when it talked about this is the 2012, that's the latest one, on the global gender gap. And do you know where India is? It's 105 out of 135 countries. So that's abominably low. While we talk about the large workforce and also the pipeline we do have when we talk about women in particular, we find it's only 105 out of 135 countries which are looked at. And similarly, International Labour Organization, ILO, it ranks India when we look at where is it from a participation rate of women in the workforce. We are ranked 120 out of 131. So you can see that this is where the gap is. So our intent here is why aren't women inspired to really join the workforce, A, and once they join, why do they drop out? While we do have women role models, how do we keep them inspired? And it's as much a male question as it's a women question, I would say, because many of you who are part of the organizations really want to harness this talent, would like to really get the customer quotient. Today we're talking about how it makes sense for us to create the D&I initiatives so that you reach out to a larger segment of customers. So it's from a business paradigm as well. It makes a lot of sense for you to have other diverse perspectives, women being one of those diversity quotients. So we're very much aware of it. So we're not trying to, you are not going to expect any of us trying to look at it. And some of us, and you will hear from Pamela, Anita, and Ritu as well, how they have managed to straddle some of these challenges, but at the same time, really focused on what they had at hand and risen above certain roadblocks, I would say. Not really looked at them as roadblocks, but looked at it as problem solving, and they have come onto their own. And today we're all very proud of each one of them in the technology frame and the space they have been part of, and how they have managed to rise above, as I say. A couple of other things. There is two groups I want to specifically make a mention. Catalyst group, I'm sure all of you have heard of. They do a lot of research, specifically when you're looking at gender or D&I inclusion and initiatives and so on. So a lot of studies year on year in terms of what are these gaps and what are the issues. One of the things which came out and which shocked the Western world, not just India, is the pay range and the gap when it comes to gender. So I'm not going to speak much. Some of you are familiar. I can see Guru nodding. So I know you have been aware of these, and I'm sure you're working on some of these key initiatives from your organization end so that you can address the issues. And the other one which came out for CEOs in particular is McKinsey Global Report. And they talked about certain initiatives which would really harness the equality among diverse groups. So women being one of those groups. So what are the four things they talked about? They talked about how do we stay committed or become committed. Talking about it is different from top-down leadership. Are they really looking at bringing in diverse perspectives? So how do you harness talent, acquire talent, develop talent, as well as engage talent? All those would be the initiatives where you are committed. Two is, how do you broaden your action? eBay has some wonderful examples of how they broadened their action to encourage more and more women to stay in the workforce as well as grow into leadership positions. And similarly, the other one they talked about is holding challenging conversations. And this is one such initiative now we have taken through IESA Vision Summit, where we're going to have a challenging conversation, not challenging anybody, but challenging ourselves in terms of what have we done in order to get here, and what do we need as organizations can come together to harness this talent and to groom them and nurture them and help them stay inspired. So that's the whole impetus of what we have out here. And I would request Pamela to get started. She's moved out of the closet, is what she just said. So we want to hear from Pamela. What is it that she has found and experienced in the 30 years she's been part of the industry and now leading the Cloud Computing and Innovation Council of India? Over to you, Pamela.
Thank you. And as she said, yeah, I have taken this stand to come out of the closet for the last 30 years. Whenever I would be called in a forum addressing women's issues, I would either take a technology position and give a technical talk, or maybe a management position talking about things like management versus technical careers and stuff like that. In the recent year, I've been addressing the women's issues, and it's been quite a journey for me, and I'll share that with you. So the transformational moments, as she put the question, and I was thinking about it. And I said, where should I start? There have been so many. Maybe I should choose the three that are probably more relevant in the context here. And the first one really is when I had my first child. I had completed my maternity period, you know, that intense period of having this baby, taking care, getting life life going topsy-turvy, getting back on track. And I had started working again in a part-time model initially. I used to go for 3 days to work and stay for a couple of days at home. And this was a very difficult period for me. My identity was very different from what I had my own view of myself, right? My identity was being very different. And I was struggling with certain things. I'd always been this top performer, 90 percentile, and when the appraisal for that year, where I had been on maternity leave for more than 6 months, for the first time ever, I got a median rating, and I cried. Okay, it was difficult for me to take that, right? So I was going through that, and I was listening to this program on National Public Radio. I was in the US. I used to work in Bell Labs at that time, and they were interviewing these 2 black women from Alabama who had become very eminent. One was in industry and the other one was a professor in some top university, and they had risen from circumstances much, much worse than what I had lived through, right? They had risen out of slavery, their parents being in slavery, done their PhDs in a very discriminating and taken these positions. And the message that came out of that was that what kept them going was they looked at themselves as a part of a continuum, a part of an evolution of women in society. They looked at the lives of their grandmothers and mothers and felt so blessed to be in this time where they had opportunities. So what the challenges they faced around them was something they took in their stride, right? And that was such a fundamental message. It really gave me that inspiration and courage to get back and lead, and that became the guiding paradigm for me as I moved in the workforce. Then came another moment. I had been in Bell Labs and in CDOT, and then I did a startup. When I moved out of CDOT, I had accomplished some good accomplishments behind me, and I went out interviewing in Bangalore. This was 1996-97. Okay, the boom of the IT industry had just started happening. A lot of MNCs, a lot of job opportunities. I must have interviewed 10, 12 places. Ultimately, I had 7, 8 job offers in my hand. But as I was going through these interviews, I realized, so here was this one interview where I go in there, and somehow the person who was interviewing, he'd done his background check. Besides I don't know how much time he spent on my technical background, but he had somehow learned that I had a husband who was who was a professor. And as he's the VP of R&D technology, right? He has the technologies, and that's where I come in. And he's talking to me about fitting into this university relations position. And I'm like, what? This is why he's called me here? And I was really aghast. And I had the courage that I had 2 job offers in my pocket already. And I went and confronted him and said, what is your org structure? Give me the background of the people who report. Tell me your org structure. Then he explained to me his org structure and the people who reported and what their background and what they did. And I told him, you know what? Where I fit in is here, in this position that this guy has. If you have this job, let's talk. Otherwise, we are wasting our time here. Okay?